Okay, so thanks for being here. Welcome to this first part of the GitHub for Maintainers Skill Up session. In this recording, we're going to talk about issue triage and managing issues on our lesson repositories in general. We will look at managing the labels on issues and discuss a little bit why and when we might want to do that. And we'll explore some of the different labels that the Carpentries provides for issues and when you might want to use them, what the implications of those could be, and so on. And then to finish up, we'll also talk about some other strategies that you can use to manage issues on GitHub, including milestones and project boards. And then in future recordings, we will talk through other essentials of open source maintenance, like reviewing pull requests effectively and handling merge conflicts when they arise. So I will share my screen and we can get started. So here we've prepared a example repository. If you scroll, or if I scroll down the screen, you'll see what is hopefully familiar to you as a Carpentries instructor or maintainer, as the standard kind of files and folders of one of our lesson repositories. So we've got the episodes folder here that contains the source files that the individual episode pages of the lesson are built from. We've got the instructors and learners folders that contain the files that are specific to the instructor view and the learner view, respectively. There's a few others here. And then we've got down here the index.md that most of the content in the landing page is built from, and the config YAML that is the controls the kind of overall, what we call the global configuration of the lesson. That's where the title of the lesson and so on is set, for example. And there's other files and folders here, but the content really of these repositories isn't the topic of this session today. Instead, we're going to spend most of the time exploring the features and some of the different aspects of this GitHub repository interface itself. If you want to visit the website that a lesson repository is built from, then you can do that by typing in the URL, or that's what I'm going to do here. So it's https:// and then my username in this case, .github.io/ and then the name of the repository. And let's do this in a new tab instead of there. There we go. But generally speaking, on one of your lesson repositories, I forgot to do it here, but you will find the link over here in the about box, and you should be able to click on there to get to your lesson website. So this is the lesson site that's being built from the repository. We can see on the left-hand side here, there's this episodes list. And this is a example lesson that's about how to bake a sourdough cinnamon roll recipe. If you look at the introduction episode, then you'll see a picture of what look like delicious cinnamon rolls to me. I have never tried this recipe. I keep meaning to, but I gather it is very good. But again, you know, the contents really of the lesson itself, what's written in here, the specifics of that recipe and so on, are not really relevant to what we're talking about today. I mention it only for context for the issues and the pull requests that we're going to look at on the repository later. Those will only make sense if you understand that the lesson is about a baking recipe. Switching back then to the repository tab, we can see from this tab and this tab here near the top of the screen that there are 3 open issues and 3 open pull requests waiting for us on this repository. This is a pretty common experience for us as maintainers of open source projects. We're usually not able to keep these numbers down to 0, really handling things as soon as possible whenever they come in, because we're busy with plenty of other things, and sometimes it's just really hard to to handle these things quickly anyway. There can be a lot of back and forth in terms of discussion on an issue or a pull request. So coming here and finding that we've got a few of each kind of contribution waiting for our attention on the repository is pretty common as an experience for us as maintainers. Issues are where members of the community can give us feedback on the lesson, can suggest a way in which it could be improved, can ask for help if they're stuck with something, this kind of thing. Pull requests, on the other hand, are where a member of the community is suggesting a specific change in a specific location in the lesson. Today, in this session, we're going to focus almost exclusively on this issues listing. So the kind of feedback and suggest ideas for improvement and so on that people have opened up on our repository. And so I've clicked on the issues tab, and we can see that there are 3 issues open at the moment, and I haven't looked at any of them yet. A couple of things that I want to draw your attention to right away with this issue listing. The first is that each of these issues has a number down here. So this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3. And all I highlight this because I want you to be aware that all issues and pull requests on a repository on GitHub are assigned this kind of unique number, and we can use that number in a few different ways, as we'll see throughout these sessions. And then the other thing that I want to draw your attention to at the moment is this symbol over here on the right-hand side. What this means with a 1 next to it is that there is 1 open pull request related to this issue. So someone has also suggested a change to the lesson that in some way corresponds to this issue. As we'll find when we look more closely, these pull requests are open to fix the problems that are being reported in these issues, but we'll look at the details soon. And then I want to address something directly because I realized after years of using GitHub that it had been really confusing me. And I'd never quite been able to pinpoint what the problem was. These drop downs at the top here, these are different ways in which you can filter the table. So this one here that says newest, this is the sorting of the table. And there are a few different options for how you can sort the issues in the table using this drop down. But the other ones here are for filtering the table. But the reason that I want to point that out directly is because I realized that for the first few years I was using GitHub, I always saw these as headings of columns because I think this icon here lines up pretty well with the assignees thing. And those 2 things don't make sense together. And it's okay that they don't make sense together, but just in case this was also something that was causing cognitive dissonance or whatever for you, I wanted to draw attention to it directly. It made my brain feel funny for a few years. So then what we're going to go through here is the kind of standard practice that a lot of open source maintainers have developed that we generally refer to as issue triage. So this idea that we take a look at all of the new issues that are coming into our repository and kind of think about what to do with them, how we want to categorize them, how we might want to prioritize which ones to deal with in which order, where we need to respond to ask for more information and so on. The time spent doing this is really well invested for you as a maintainer because it's going to ensure that you have a really clear understanding of what's going on with your repository and that you can be really intentional about what you do next, where you want to spend your time, where you might want to call for other people to come and help you with something or whatever else. And so what I really recommend that you do whenever you come to your repository for the first time in a little while is take a look through all of the new issues that have been opened first. And also take a look at any issues that have been updated since you last arrived as well. You can sort this listing by last updated, for example. And what that will do is that even if you've got an issue that's pretty old, which would be far down this listing based on the default newest sorting, it'll bump the ones to the top that have had new comments added to them or whatever recently, which is a good way to make sure that you're on top of all of the activity in your repository. We'll start with the issue that was opened the longest time ago. These were all opened with a script, so they all show the same time that they were opened, but you can tell this one was opened first because it's called number 1. So we're going to take a look at that. And we can tell right away from the title of the issue what the problem is likely to be here. This person has come to report some typos, some typographic errors that they've found in the lesson. They've given a nice descriptive title to the issue, and they've even been so kind as to report exactly which file these typos are in, and the lines even that they're on, and the specifics of the individual errors and how they could be fixed. Suffice to say, this level of detail and helpfulness cannot always be assumed in the issues that people open on your repositories, but we provide, or the Carpentries provides, issue templates that help to kind of nudge people in the right direction to do this, but you should be ready to ask for more information and not be afraid to do that where you need to if something isn't clear in the issue that's being reported. So we can see here that there are these 4 typos in this episode/recipe instructions.md file. If I go back to the lesson site and open the baking instructions episode, which is the recipe instructions built from that recipe instructions file, then we can see some of these typos here. So indeed, it says that you will be able to produce, missing an O here in produce. There are far too many O's in the word proving as well. And so this person's telling us about those problems, which is very nice of them. What I would recommend that we do at this point is add some labels to this issue to help us kind of categorize it for if we want to filter the issues or refer back to them later and remind ourselves what they're about. And so at this point, we should take a look at the standard set of labels that the Carpentries provides. It's important for me to note here that this set of labels from the Carpentries is different and longer than the list of issues that you get by default from GitHub. So this is something that's set up on all of the Carpentries lesson repositories. You don't need to worry about setting them up if you're a maintainer of one of those repositories. They should be there and ready for you to use. So I clicked on labels here on the right-hand side, and you can see that at the top, we've got these 2 labels, good first issue and help wanted. I'm going to come back to talk about those shortly because they've got kind of special meaning for the Carpentries specifically. And we're going to scroll down instead past high priority and invalid to a set of labels that begin status. And we're going to scroll through those to find another set of labels that begin type. And so broadly speaking, what we aim to do is to be able to categorize each issue on our repository with 1 status label and 1 type label. You don't necessarily need to use the status labels, but the type labels in particular can be helpful. And so we might consider adding the type bug label to this issue specifically because there are typos that are being reported, but typos are sufficiently common in lessons that we actually have a dedicated label for typos in the text as well. And so what I'm going to do, I've scrolled right to the bottom. We got type, typo text, and I can check that box. And then we'll come back to the status in a moment. I can click away, and we see this label added to the issue. So what about the status then? If we take a look at the different options there, we've got blocked. If there's something that means that we can't make progress with this issue, duplicate, if there's another issue already reporting the same thing, typically what we would do is add that status duplicate label, thank the person for opening the issue, mention that it's a duplicate of another issue. This is the first point at which we might want to use that number that I mentioned before. You can say this is a duplicate of number 27 or whatever the number of the other issue is. And that's going to create this link between the two issues. And then you can close the issue that's a duplicate, because you don't need to have both of them open on the repository. So it's okay to close something that's a duplicate of something else. We've got in progress, where a contributor's working on the issue. We've got need more information. If you've asked for more information and you can't proceed, you can add that label. Out of scope, if you're not going to make the change. Again, in that case, as we discussed in the maintainer onboarding, thank the person for making the contribution, for suggesting the thing in the issue, but mark it as, don't be afraid to mark it as out of scope, and then close the issue, having explained why it is out of scope, linked to any previous discussion or something where that decision was made, and so on. But yeah, go ahead and close the issue in those cases as well. And this refer to CAC, we'll come back to that soon as well. Oh yeah, and we've got two more still, wait and waiting for response. So wait would be, as the description states, kind of if you can't deal with this yet because you're waiting for something else to get dealt with, then you can apply this label. Subtly different from the blocked label, but important, I think. It's not exactly blocked, it's just you want to do things in a certain order. And waiting for response is, we can't make progress before hearing from somebody. So this could be from the curriculum advisors or other maintainers or something. Again, we'll come back to talk about the curriculum advisors in a few minutes. Okay, so what status should we apply in this case? Well, we can see here that GitHub's telling us that this user has linked a pull request that will close this issue 29 minutes ago. So let's take a look at that pull request. It's titled Fix Typos in Recipe Instructions, so it certainly sounds promising. And as we'll see when we come back to talk about reviewing pull requests, we'll take a look at this in more details, but suffice to say for now, it does look like it's going to fix the typos, so that's great. And the way that GitHub knows that this pull request is going to fix that issue, will close that issue, is that the person who opened this pull request wrote fixes #1 here. So that #1, again, is referring to the number of the issue that we were looking at before. So GitHub's able to create this kind of link between the two. And even better than that, you might not be able to see it unless your screen resolution and the resolution of this recording is very good, but there is a very, very faint gray underline on this word fixes here. And if I hover my cursor over it, then we see a little pop-up appear that says, this pull request closes issue #1. This is a bit of magic that GitHub can do. If you use these special kind of keywords, fix, fixes, close, closes, resolve, and resolves, I think there might be a fourth verb that I can't remember. This tells GitHub that if this pull request gets merged, if the changes get accepted, then GitHub can go ahead and automatically close the issue that's associated with it. So we're not going to need to remember to go back and close the issue ourselves if this pull request gets merged. But we'll come back and review the pull request and maybe merge it in the next session when we talk about pull request reviews, and you'll just have to wait and see what the outcome is there. So back to the issues then, and back to issue #1. Because we know that there is a pull request there, we don't know yet whether or not it's ready to go. We will want to add the status in progress label. It's a good idea to do this because anyone else coming to the repository who hasn't kind of looked into things in detail, they'll get to this list now and they'll see, oh, someone's already working on this one. Okay, so I probably don't need to worry about it. And maybe they'll go and look at the next one, for example. All right, let's talk about good first issue and help wanted. You can see the descriptions here. Good first issue marks something as a good issue for first-time contributors to the project. Help wanted indicates that we're looking for contributors for this particular issue. As I mentioned before, these labels have special meaning for the Carpentries, and that's because the Carpentries hosts a page on our website called Help Wanted Issues. Oh, it's a lesson/lessons/help wanted these days since our website got revamped. And this contains a list in a table, quite a long table, with 186 entries at the moment of all of the issues on all of our lesson repositories that have either the Help Wanted label attached to them or the Good First Issue label attached to them. And during things like our instructor training, we often encourage newcomers to the community, newly certified instructors and so on, to look for ways in which they can get involved with contributing to our open source lessons. And one of the things that we do then is point them towards this table as a place where they can go, where they can feel confident that they will find something, some contribution that they could make that would be really impactful and really kind of welcomed by the maintainers of the given lesson. It does work. Speaking from experience, I have added the Help Wanted label, for example, to issues, and then found that spontaneous contributions from other community members have been much more likely to happen than on issues that haven't had this label attached to them. So I can recommend that you do it with your lessons as well. The Good First Issue label, that will also cause the issue to show up in that table. So anyone out there who's looking for a particularly kind of easy, low-hanging fruit contribution to make for the first time, perhaps because they don't feel confident working with Markdown or with GitHub and so on, you can use this label to help them find those things that should be fairly easy to do. So, for example, if we didn't already have a pull request here to fix this one, I would add Good First Issue on this issue, specifically because the person who reported it gave pretty much all the information that you could hope for to be able to make this issue as easy to solve as possible. They've mentioned specifically the file that would need to be edited, and they've even itemized the particular changes that would need to be made. And having gone to the trouble of doing that, perhaps it's no wonder that they went and made the pull request themselves. Okay, that's issue number one then. To continue our process of triage, let's take a look at issue number two. Cinnamon rolls burnt. This sounds like a big problem in the context of a lesson that's about how to make how to do some baking. They say, I tried the recipe and unfortunately the rolls came out pretty burned. I think the problem is that the Fahrenheit to Celsius temperature conversion is incorrect. 375 Fahrenheit is 190 Celsius, but the temperature stated in the recipe 290 C. That's a pretty big difference, and it's no surprise perhaps that the cinnamon rolls came out pretty burned. Though I am impressed that this person's oven could get up to 290 C, because mine certainly can't. What labels should we apply to this one? Well, in this case, I would argue that this is a bug. We have to imagine a little bit what this would mean in the context of an actual lesson. I would consider this to be equivalent to one of the examples, like code examples in the lesson, perhaps not working as it's described in the lesson, producing different output, or perhaps not working at all. Maybe a exercise where the solution is incorrect, something like that, right, would maybe be equivalent to the kind of mistake that causes the whole recipe to be a disaster. So we're going to call this a bug. And then just like before, we can see that the same user has linked a pull request that's going to close this issue. And so we can add the status in progress label again. And then let's move on to the third issue, because that gives me a chance to talk about the other label that I haven't really mentioned yet. So in this issue, the person who's opened it is suggesting that the sourdough cinnamon rolls recipe that's kind of the central example of the lesson itself should be replaced with an alternative recipe, because the text of these templated issues was written by our colleague Angelique, who's from South Africa. The suggested replacement of recipe is a popular South African baked treat, apparently. And so they've linked to a place where you can read more about the recipe. they've included the list of ingredients and the instructions and so on, and perhaps they could open a pull request that would make all of these changes as well. But it's very helpful that they've done this as an issue first, because for this kind of major change, which would really alter almost everything about the lesson content, it's a good idea to discuss it first before going to the trouble of opening a pull request. And so again, we have to use our imaginations a bit to think about what would be the equivalent to this in the context of a real lesson from the Carpentries. But I would suggest that it's something like proposing that the central example data set or the central narrative of the lesson should be replaced wholesale with something else. And indeed, we saw that in 2024 with the software carpentry Git lesson, where the central narrative did get changed. So it does happen from time to time. But this is exactly the kind of issue, exactly the kind of discussion that we recommend, or really that we want our maintainers to kind of escalate to the curriculum advisors for their curriculum that their lesson falls under, or to the curriculum team from the core team if a curriculum advisory committee doesn't exist for that lesson. And so it's in these cases, it's in cases like these that the status refer to CAC label was invented for. So we can put that label onto the issue, and for type, we might choose discussion, or we might choose enhancement, so something that would improve the lesson. I'm going to go with discussion here because it's very likely that there's going to need to be some back and forth about whether or not this is a good idea between the person who opened the issue, the maintainers, and the curriculum advisors, and perhaps other members of the community and so on as well. So we've got type discussion, we've got status refer to CAC. And when I click away, those two labels get added to the issue. One important point to note is that this isn't necessarily going to be enough to draw attention to the issue from the curriculum advisors. And so one of the other things that I recommend that maintainers do at this stage is comment on the issue, tagging the curriculum advisory committee for your curriculum to make sure that they're aware. So we can say, it's always important to thank the person for contributing. So we can say, thank you, and then tag them for, let's say, making this suggestion, this kind of major change to the lesson needs to be discussed and approved by the curriculum advisors. So I am tagging them here for input, I don't know, whatever. And then what you can do, it's not going to work here because we're working on a personal repository rather than one within an organization. But let's say that this lesson belongs to the data carpentry baking curriculum, then we would do @data carpentry / and if you were working in the data carpentry organization, you would see a drop down still appearing at this point with different options to choose between. But the common pattern for the curriculum advisors team, curriculum advisors - baking in this case, or if it's for the image processing curriculum, is curriculum - advisors - image. For genomics, curriculum - advisors - genomics, and so on. If you're working on a lesson for software carpentry or for library carpentry, they've only got a single curriculum advisory committee each. So it would be @library carpentry / curriculum advisors, or @SW carpentry / curriculum advisors, depending on which lesson program your lesson belongs to. And then we can make this comment. So this @ is not going to do anything here, but again, if we were in the organization and this team existed, this would show up in bold and be linked so that you could look at who was in the team and so on. Let's go back to the other two issues, because we didn't comment on those, and we should have done, to say thank you to the person for making the contribution, if nothing else. So back to number 2, cinnamon rolls burned. we can say, thank you for reporting this, and then tag them. I have checked the conversion. I haven't checked the conversion, but I promise you it's correct. I've checked the conversion and you are right. So sorry that your roles got burned. And we'll add that comment here. And then for the typos, we can say, thank you for providing such a detailed report, and then tag them again. Great. So now we've gone through this triage process for each of our new open issues. We've responded to thank the person for taking the time to open the issue. That's really important to do. We've added labels to help us kind of categorize them. We've looked a little bit at how this linking between pull requests that are opened to resolve issues and the issues themselves takes place on GitHub. And we've tried to refer something to our imaginary baking curriculum advisory committee as well. This might seem like an unnecessary amount of effort, like adding the labels and so on, given that we've already got pull requests open for these issues. But the reason that I think it's important to go through this exercise here, at least, is that if you start to imagine a issue listing on your repository that's got 10, 15, 20, 50, in some cases, open issues, then at that stage, having ways in which you can relatively quickly filter them down and prioritize them and so on becomes really helpful. And so I try to follow this practice on the lessons that I am a maintainer of myself, to try to make sure that I'm adding labels to issues when they come in, regardless of how quickly or otherwise I think they're going to get dealt with. It helps to keep on top of them. The last thing that you want to do is 6 months later, when your issue list has got really long, decide, oh, you know what would be helpful is some labels on these issues, and then to have to go through the process that I just demonstrated for 50 issues all in one go. It's going to be so time consuming that you might not do it, which would be a shame. And so with the labels attached, we can start to filter this list, for example. If I want to see all of the issues that are bugs, I can click on this one here that says type bug, and that filters the list down to only show me this one. But if there were 3 issues that were bugs out of 50 in the list, this would then very quickly show me only the 3 that I'd be interested in. The other way that you can do this filtering is with this labels drop down here. It says here filter by label. I can uncheck type bug and check status in progress as an example, and see the 2 that are labeled as in progress. And what we ask the chairs of our curriculum advisory committees to do, for example, is regularly visit the lesson repositories that they're kind of responsible for overseeing and filtering the issue list for the refer to CAC label to see which issues are up for discussion for their committee. But as I mentioned before, please don't rely on them doing that to find out about things. Please tag them on the issues as well to make sure that they're aware. And that's issue triage, I suppose. From here, what I would go on to do is figure out what is most urgent, or highest priority for me to address, start to take a look through those pull requests that have been opened already, things like that. We'll come to pull request review, as I mentioned, in the next session. And so really the last thing that I want to tell you about during this session is some other ways in which you can kind of subset, filter your issues or manage them in a kind of more advanced way. And my favorite way to do that is milestones with GitHub. So I'm going to click on the milestones button here, and we can see that GitHub's telling me I haven't created any milestones. We're going to go ahead and do this, and then I'm going to explain what a milestone is. It's easier to do it once we've got one to look at. So I'm going to click the nice green create a milestone button. I'm going to put No, let's go May 2025 release as a name for the milestone. And what we would be doing here is trying to collect together all of the issues that we want to address before the release that we want to make of our project, in this case, our lesson in May. And you can see here that there's the option of including a due date. We'll put 31st of May, because that then gives us the whole month to deal with them. And we can say issues to be addressed before the release scheduled for the end of the month. And you can put whatever you like in this description and then create milestone. Now that I've done that, we can see in this milestones listing, we've got one open milestone. It says it's 0% complete, 0 open and 0 closed. And if I click on the title of the milestone, then what we see here is an empty issue listing. Now, if we go back to the full list of issues, I'm going to click on the issues tab up here. What we can do is choose some of these issues. We'll take the cinnamon rolls burned and the typos in recipe instructions issues. And we can say with this milestone button that appears at the top right, we can open this drop down. We can select May 2025 release. It says bulk update completed successfully. And we can see now, let's uncheck. I think I clicked this to uncheck it. There we go. We can see now that this little signpost has appeared next to 2 of these issues. And if I click on that signpost, May 2025 release, it takes me back to the issue listing for this milestone specifically. And we can see that only these 2 issues are in there. And so this is a way that we can subset the overall listing of issues in our repository to focus only on whatever smaller number of those issues we want to be dealing with right now. For kind of day-to-day lesson maintenance, this might not be particularly helpful, but when you're doing kind of lesson development or development of some other project, having milestones like this to help you really, and your collaborators really focus on what is important to be working on right now can be really helpful. The other thing that's really nice about milestones, in my experience, is that when you start to close these issues as you're working through them, this little progress bar progresses, for want of a better word. And so you get the satisfaction of seeing that you're getting closer and closer to your target of being able to make this release or whatever, and that can feel good. And then, oh, I didn't mean to click that, sorry. Is there something else that I want to tell you about? No, right. So that's it, I think, for milestones. And the last thing to mention, though I won't talk about them for long because I don't use them very much, is projects. Projects are okay. Thanks, GitHub. There we go. Projects are controlled at the organization level, so you can set up a project for data carpentry as a whole or software carpentry as a whole. And they're a way of collecting together issues potentially from multiple different repositories that are related somehow in a particular project. And you can create what's often referred to as a Kanban board, where you kind of organize these issues into different categories based on whether they're still waiting to be worked on, whether they're in progress, whether they've been dealt with, and you drag and drop these cards around across the board. And I recommend, if you're interested in learning more about how to do that, search the internet for Kanban boards, GitHub or something, and look for, there are really nice tutorial videos out there that you can follow if that's something you're interested in learning how to do. We don't have time to talk about it much today, and as I mentioned, I don't use them all that much, so I might not be the best person to give you that walkthrough. And that's it really for issues for now. We will close at least 2 of these issues in the next session or in the next 2 sessions when we talk about reviewing pull requests and resolving merge conflicts. But for now, thank you for listening, and I hope you'll watch the other videos too.